Shabbat Shalom, beloved. I want to welcome you to Eastern's Couch Talk. Today we continue to discuss on the issue of the day start. I want to make this one the final one. There are a lot more that we could have shared, but I don't think we should dwell on one theme for too long a time. So I feel like maybe let me conclude it. But what better way to conclude it than to come to the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Yahusha, revealing day start. In other words, what we are saying is, in the Mashayah, you still find this important theme of time reckoning. When you go into the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Yahusha, therein you will find also the revelation of how time is reckoned from creation, from Parashit. And Yahusha does not do anything different from that which is done in Parashit. And so the events, as they are explained in the context of time, they are in line, they are in alignment with the way time was unrolled in Genesis, in Parashit chapter 1, on the first day of creation. So we are going to see that Yahusha's death, Yahusha's crucifixion and death and resurrection reveal a dawn day start. There are a few things we may need to revisit, right? Like, I see days in scripture started dawn and ended dawn. We have seen that in the book of Parashit, chapter 1, and we saw that also in the Sabbath revelation in Parashit chapter 1. All the time a day in Parashit is decreed at dawn and numbered at dawn, right? At dawn, that's when the day ends and it's numbered. So which means that's where the new day starts. You can't shift from there and try to start the day at any other point other than the point where the previous day ends. So that makes sense to anyone who would like to accept the narrative that is in the scripture. And from there, we also looked at the Sabbath in Shemot chapter 16, where the miracle of revealing the Sabbath is done. You will notice that Masha says, today is the Shabbat in the morning, referring to the morning when they gathered the manna. The Sabbath was not the previous night or the previous evening, but when the morning came, the time of gathering of manna, Masha says, today it is the Sabbath. And we saw also that even the Sabbath itself, as it was revealed in Parashit, right, chapter 1, we saw that it could not start in another time other than the time when the previous day, the 60th day, ended, which was in the morning. And then when you observe and rehearse the feasts of Leviticus 23, which are the Shabbats in statutes spoken of by the prophet Ezekiel in chapter 20, verses 11 and 12, and verses 19 and 20, which Shabbats lead to true worship, you will notice you cannot observe evening to evening and be in sync, like we looked at the feast of Pesach, the feast of Passover. We saw that if you do not observe a dawn to dawn a day, you are likely going to kill the Passover. In fact, you are going to kill the Passover before the 14th. You'll have to kill it on the 30th because you're going to have the meal on the Passover when it is supposed to be right through the night and end, say about 2 a.m. That's when the meal was expected to end. And about 2 a.m. before the next sunrise, it was still considered Passover. And when we noticed in Numbers, we saw that Numbers clearly showed that the following day, after the Passover midnight, when Yahuwah passed over the children of Yahshua, after that, the following morning, which was the 15th, was the day that they left, and then they went away from Israel. So the 15th when they left in the 15th, scripture says it was in the morning, right? The day after the night that Yahweh passed them over in Mizraim. So you can't do it any other way. And we looked at also at the Day of Atonement. The only thing connected to evening in the text in Leviticus 23 was the fasting, right? Fasting of the Day of Atonement was the only thing that was connected with the evening. And scripture made it very clear that the evening, when fasting is going to start, did not belong to the 10th, whereas all the aspects of the Day of Atonement were connected and attached to the 10th of the 7th month. But when it came to the affliction, when it comes to a fasting, scripture makes it clear that the fasting could not start on the 10th, but would have to start in the evening of the 9th. In other words, when the mixing is taking place, that mixing that takes place after the light part of the 9th belonged to the 9th day. And it was ushering in the night of the 9th day. And so there's no confusion in the festivals. When you follow Yahuwah's instructions with regards to his worship, you will quickly notice that there is no confusion in it. The feast can only start to make sense to you when you keep them, observe them from a dawn-to-dawn day start or record time reckoning. So we notice in the Day of Atonement that the evening of starting fasting belongs to the 9th day. It's not of the 10th day. That makes it, that makes you also to think, because if you say sunset to sunset, that means the mixing takes place after the sunset, right? Just like when we looked at Nehemiah, when we saw that the gates were closed when it was already dark after the sunset. And so therefore, the darkness that was coming, that was being ushered by the sun that was setting, that had already set, that darkness that came after the setting of the sun did not belong to the Sabbath, but was pointing to the Sabbath that was going to begin in the morning. And so, yeah, it can't get clearer than that. I'm sure if we reason with the Most High, Yahweh, and ask him, he will give us wisdom and understanding, and we will have knowledge. Then we can truly obey his Torah. One other thing to take note of, Yahusha, the Yahusha'S, or the Lamb of Yah, that taketh away the sin of the world, died in the middle of the week. That's a prophecy which we find in the book of Daniel, right? Chapter 9, verse 27. This prophecy, or this symbolic middle timeline, which is the middle of the week, obviously it applies to the greater time, which was the 2,300 days and nights, which can only be interpreted, that timeline can only be interpreted in a symbolic sense. You can't take those days literally and then fulfill the prophecy. You have to take the days as days of years, right? Just as Yahweh in the book of Numbers, in the book of Ezekiel, he said that I'll give you a day for a year, right? So that's how you start to explain prophetic timelines. You do it from that basis, because if you take 2,300 days and try to interpret it, fit them literally as they are, it won't make sense. If you take 70 weeks, try to, in the prophecy of Daniel in chapter 9, to try to make it fit in literally, it won't make sense. But we shouldn't lose something. This prophecy, whilst it is heavily centered in symbolism, but one thing that we should know is that the symbols, or this prophecy, is coming from a literal reality of things. The symbols are represented by a literal reality. And so, applied literally, Yahusha died in a literal week, right? It wouldn't make sense to isolate the fact that Yahusha died in a literal week, right? You can't run away from that. So when you take that scripture, it would not be correct that the scripture which says he died in the middle of the week, then he would die on another day of the week. No, it doesn't make sense. So taken in the literal context, Yahusha died in the middle of the week. Though others may want to apply Daniel's 9:27 strictly in prophetic, they do not notice the literal aspects in this verse. Here's the verse. Here's what it reads, how it reads. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of the abominations, he shall mark it desolate even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So the punishment that was determined will be poured upon the desolate. Now, here are some of the literal aspects of this prophecy. The confirmation of the covenant is only through the Lamb's literal death. I want you to get that. There is no symbolism here. There's got to be a literal death of the lamb, of a literal lamb itself, right? A literal lamb, not in the sense of a real lamb, but a real living being, which is Yahusha, who is the lamb of the lamb of Yahweh, right? So this is a real being, a real person, the son of Elohim, right? Who is going to die, right? Right? And his death is a literal death. It's not symbolic, right? This death took place at Passover or Pesach. For he, Yahusha, who fulfilled and they continue to fulfill the Shabbats. Remember, all the Shabbats, the feasts in Leviticus 23, they are centered on Yahusha himself because he is the fulfillment of those festivals. And so he has fulfilled them in the past, and he continues to fulfill them even now, and will continue to fulfill them in the future. Thus, the festivals are going to be there forever in the kingdom of Yahweh. How do you then do away with them now in the interim? Because they're just like those who would do away with the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath. They want to do away with the weekly Sabbath, but Scripture says, in the new heaven and the new earth, the Shabbats will continue. And Yahusha says, he is going to eat this Passover with them in the kingdom. Right? And so, therefore, these times of worship, these times of that point to the plan of salvation are memorial. These times are appointed times. They are not going to be done away with. It's like if you have been married, you get married once, but you continue to commemorate your day of marriage. So yes, this death took place on Passover, for he which have fulfilled and continue to fulfill the Shabbat. When he speaks of his death and resurrection, he delineates the time as 3 days and 3 nights. This simply put is 3 light periods and 3 dark periods. You can't do away with that. There is no gymnastics that can be done here, because the delineation is very telling, it's very precise, right? Don't come and try to explain this, because the way they are given, it's a fact that these things have got to be delineated that way. 3 light periods and 3 dark periods. Period. That's how it is. Don't try to change that. So the Master died on our literal week, this pagan nominated week, right? Because the days are given in the pagan sense, in the pagan way of reckoning of time. So the middle day of the week, coming from the Sabbath, which is the end of the week, and the Sunday, which is the first day of the week, the center of the 7 days is Wednesday on the pagan calendar, right? So the master died on our literal week on Wednesday. And Thursday, the following day, must be a set-apart convocation day and the first Shabbat of unleavened bread, or the first set-apart convocation of the unleavened bread feast. So the day after Wednesday was a set-apart convocation, right? So it was a day where you do no work, just like the weekly Sabbath. But in this festival, the only thing that you were allowed to do was that you could cook and prepare food for yourselves. But any of the other things that are applicable to the weekly Sabbath are also applicable to the first set-apart day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. I want you to understand that. So you could not do any several work on this day. So when you count correctly, Yahusha was in the tomb Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night, to make 3 nights. And he was in the tomb Thursday day, Friday day, and the Sabbath day, to make 3 days. So by the time they went to the sepulchre on the Sunday or first day, early in the morning, he was not in the tomb. He was not in the sepulchre. Right. So we will know that according to the way the time was delineated, Yahusha had already risen when the night of the Shabbat was on setting, was coming, right? So we have got some New Testament explicit scriptures that I want us to deal with, to look at, that clearly shows that the day starts at dawn, right? Yahusha'S crucifixion and resurrection reveals dawn to dawn day reckoning. Evening does not change the 24-hour cycle. I want us to understand that. Right. The only place where the 24-hour cycle, the only season where the 24-hour cycle gets to be changed, it's not in the evening, but it is in the morning. When you read in Bereshit chapter 1, you are going to notice that it is in the morning that the day is numbered, the day is reckoned, and it is in the morning that a new series of creation starts. And that's where we have a change of the 24-hour cycle. That's where we have the change. The evening does not bring about a 24-hour cycle. I want that to stick in your minds. So we look at, I think the first passage that I want us to read is, let me start with, I want to start with the death and resurrection of crucifixion and resurrection of Yahusha. So we are going to read from Mark 15 verse 25. Then we'll go to 33, then we'll go to 34. Right. So it says here, oh, okay, even before I do that, I want to give you a heads up of these 2 verses. We're going to come back to them as well. So just to give you a heads up on what the scriptures is saying. Luke 23:54. These are the verses that we're going to dwell on. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. The word drew on is epiphosko, which means dawn, right? So the day of preparation is the one that is in context in the discussions that are taking place here. But it's coming to an end, and it's at dawn, and the Sabbath is drawing on. So that's clear from Luke there. And Matthew 28 verse 1 says, in the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. So again, Matthew 28 verse 1 makes it very clear that the Sabbath is ending at dawn, and what is coming at that dawn is the first day of the week. Very explicit, very clear and explicit verses showing that by dawn of the first day, Yahusha was not in the tomb. So the Sabbath is ending at dawn as the first day starts. Here is Yahusha'S crucifixion and resurrection, revealing that dawn-to-dawn day reckoning evening does not change the 20-hour cycle. Now, what time did Yahusha'S of Arimathea come to fetch the body of Yahusha? Now, we go to Mark chapter 15. It says there, and it was the 3rd hour, and they crucified him. So Yahusha dies on the 3rd hour. Maybe let me give you how time Yahweh from the beginning, how he distributed time. Right. Remember, the earth, according to scripture, the earth is cyclical. That's Isaiah, right? It's cyclical. It's a circle, right? The earth is a circle, right? There is our earth, right? There is our earth, right? Then it is divided here. It is divided, right? It is divided into 2 main time zones, right? Right. Here there is a season. Here there is a season. And there is another season of mixing, right? So we assume that the top would be the light period, because Yahweh divided the day. He divided the day into 2, right? So the top would be the light period or day, right? This would be the day. And then the bottom would be the night. So this would be the night. This will be the night, right? Dark, I'm going to use a dark color to indicate the darkness of the night. And this is a mixing. This is a mixing of darkness and light. Right, so that's a mixing space. Or if you like to call it a mixing period. It applies also here. It's also a mixing space. Right. So you have a mixture of light. Right. Here you've got a mixture of receding light and encroaching darkness. Right. So this becomes dawn, a mixture of receding darkness, right? And a mixture of encroaching light. So in this case, you get dawn here. Right. So at dawn, light is coming, right? Is encroaching. And at dawn, darkness is receding, right? Darkness is receding. And here, darkness is encroaching, right? In this space. And light is receding. Right? That's the cyclical nature of how time is. This is dusk. Sorry, I need to use the red pen there. Right. Just to write. So this is dusk, or Arab. This is dawn, which is Boka, right? This is Boka. This is Boga in Hebrew, or Vuka in Bantu, right? And this is Arab or Arab, right? So there we are. So Yahweh in the beginning, he divided time into two time zones, or into two spaces. The space that will be dark, and the space that will be light. And okay, where were we? Right. I want us to understand this, that Scripture says, and it was the third hour that they crucified him. So third hour comes, or is determined from the dawn, right? Third hour would be, okay, so this, let's say this is our center. So third hour will be here. So there is the third hour, right? Right. So Scripture says, and they crucified him. And when the sixth hour was come, there was darkness over the whole land until the ninth hour. So the sixth hour comes here, right? Sixth hour, right? And there's darkness until the ninth hour. I want us to understand how time is being unrolled here. Very important that we understand that. So this is darkness. It's a supernatural darkness, right? Supernatural darkness. It's not supposed to be dark at this hour, but it's going to be dark because Yah has made it to be so. Nature cannot go against its creator. And so Scripture continues to say in verse 34, and at the ninth hour, Yahusha cried with a loud voice, saying, Allah, lama sabachthani, which is being interpreted, my Elohim, why hast thou forsaken me? Right. So that is what is happening. I want us to catch this. He is impaled, crucified on the third hour of the day. The third hour of the day is always counted from the morning, right? Even the scriptures themselves, they make the morning or dawn to be the starting point of counting time, right? So if the scripture starts at dawn to count time, how come you want to start counting time at dusk or in the sunset, which is totally against what is in the scriptures? And so Scripture continues to say in Mark 15 verse 24, it continues to say, and now when the evening was come, because it was the preparation day, that is the day before the Sabbath. So this is a crasher. When evening came, this is evening, right? It says it was preparation. This day was preparation, right? And it came before the Sabbath, right? Evening has come, right? Right. Mark 15 verse 42 is very clear. It says, and when evening, and now when the evening was come, because it was preparation, that is the day before the Sabbath. Now, sunset to sunset would say at this point, right? At this point, when the sun sets, at this point, when the sun sets, that must be the beginning of the Sabbath. Because that's sunset, right? The sun must set, right? When the sun is completely down, right? The rays of the sun have been removed from the atmosphere. When the rays of the sun have been removed from the atmosphere of this part of the earth, then it starts to get dark, then they say that's when the Sabbath starts. And here, when the rays of the sun start sunrise, this is sunrise, right? At this point, that's sunrise. How do I write it? Maybe let me write it here. This is sunrise, right? Now, at this point, it's sunrise, and this is the same point, sunset. So sunset to sunset will reckon its time from the time when the sun sets. Remember, the mixing times are already after the sunset. The mixing times are before the sunrise. I want us to understand that. So the sunrise and sunset has got nothing to do with the beginning of the day and night seasons. They will have already started before the sunrise or sunset. Now, what does scripture say? Let's continue. Right. So and now when the evening was come, because it was preparation, that is the day before the Sabbath. So the evening has already come, right? And it is in line or in agreement with Nehemiah. It is already dark. It is already getting dark, right? The mixing is taking place, right? We can see that the Sabbath has not yet started, right? Because it was still considered preparation day or preparation cycle, 24-hour cycle. Evening has come, the sun has set already. We are in the mixing time or the twilight, but it is still the day of preparation. I want us to understand that. Then verse 43, Mark 15, verse 43 says, and Yahusha'S of Ramatayim, an honorable counselor, which also awaited for the kingdom of Elohim, came and went in boldly unto Pilate and craved the body of Yahusha. So he went to ask for the body of Yahusha there. Now, what time did Yahusha'S of Arimathea, as you say it in King KJV, or as correctly rendered as Ramatayim, what time did Yahusha'S of Arimathea come to fetch the body of Yahusha? Matthew 27 verse 35 gives us a clue. And they crucified him. Right. What time did they crucify him? Third hour. That was crucifixion, right? Crucifixion, third hour. And the death, 6th hour. Right. That's what we've noticed. Right. So, and they crucified him and they parted his garments, casting lots that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture they cast lots. Then Matthew 27 verse 38 continues to say, then were there 2 thieves crucified with him, one on the right hand and another on the left. So we know that at the crucifixion, there were 2 other thieves that were crucified with him. Verse 45 of Matthew 27:45 says, now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land unto the 9th hour. That's what we can see there on the diagram there. 57, when the evening was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea named Yahusha'S, who also himself was Yahusha'S disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Yahusha. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. So what time did Yahusha'S of Arimathea come? He came somewhere in between here, right? Between dusk, between these 2 lines. That's the time when he came. The sun has already set. And he comes in the evening, right? So he is given the body. Now, Pilate commanded that the body be given or be delivered. Now, verse 62 of the same chapter, Matthew 27:62 says, now the next day that followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate. They didn't come here. It's a different cycle altogether. Right? The next day they came to Pilate, saying, we remember that the deceiver said while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Verse 64. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day, lest, you see, do you hear the language? The 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and they say unto the people, he is risen from the dead. So the last era shall be worse than the first. I don't know whether you're seeing this. Maybe I should actually draw another diagram here. Right. How am I going to draw it? Okay. Let's start with, because we need 3 days here. Right. So we have this, then I'm not sure the 3 days will fit here. Then we have that, then we have this, right? Then we have that, right? So this is how it's playing out. There is this season, right? Oh, okay. Okay. Let me just rub here. So there is this season of mixing, and there is this season of mixing as well. Then we have this season of mixing. Then we have this season of mixing as well. Right. I want to do it this way. Maybe it can help us to understand. So, this is the day of preparation. Right? Preparation. Day of prep, right? You are preparing for the Shabbat. This is sunset. This is sunset. This is the mixing time. This is the mixing time. This is also mixing time. This is also mixing time. This is also mixing time. Right. So here it is. And this is the night of prep. Right. This is the night of prep. This is day prep. Right. This is night prep. Right. So that's the 24-hour cycle of preparation. This is the day, Sabbath day here. Sabbath day. Right? And here we have sunrise here. This is the mixing time. Right? Then we have sunset here. Sunset. Right. Then we have Sabbath night. The night that follows the light period belongs to the light period. That must be understood. It is not the night that is the chief. It is the light part of the 24-hour cycle, which is the chief. And thus Yahuwah starts even by naming, by decreeing, by allocating the light first. And he says the light shall be the day. Then he goes on to allocate darkness. And he says the darkness shall be night. So by the very sequence of allocating of these seasons, Yahuwah makes the light to be the chief period that determines the number of the 24-hour cycle. So therefore, the night that follows the light belongs to the light period, or the light period is the owner of all the seasons that come in the 24-hour cycle. That must be understood. And so, Scripture continues to say, where was I? I was, right. Yahusha'S of Arimathea, an honorable counselor, which also waited for the kingdom of Elohim, came and went in boldly unto Pilate, right? And they craved the body of Yahusha. So we saw that he came in the evening, right? He came in the evening to collect the body of Yahusha, who was impaled on the preparation day, right? So on the third hour here, third hour, crucifixion, right? Crucifixion. Then on the sixth hour, that's death, right? And also the beginning of darkness up to the 9th hour, right? The 9th hour, from the 6th to the 9th, is a period of darkness, right? This is darkness, supernatural darkness, right? This is the 9th hour. The 9th hour. So there is a supernatural darkness on the 9th hour. This is a period of darkness all over the earth. 3 hours, right, of darkness at that time. I'm sure it is understandable. Then verse 38 says, there were there 2 thieves crucified with him, and one on the right, one on the right. Okay, we've read that. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness. Okay, we've read that. When the evening was come, Matthew 27:57, there came a rich man, Yahusha'S of Arimathea, who also himself was Yahusha'S disciple. He went in to get the body. Now the body, he got the body in the evening. Or where are we? Here. Oh, so day of preparation, the evening came here. So he comes here in the evening, after sunset, right? Yahusha'S after sunset, right? Collects the body. I came to ask for the body, so we can just say collect the body. He came to Pilate to collect the body. Now, he went to Pilate and begged the body of Yahusha. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. At one time, when the evening had come. So that's when he goes to Pilate to collect the body. Probably the collection of the body, take it into the tomb, will take some more hours, right, to get it into the tomb. Verse 62, Matthew 27:52 says, now the next day that followed the day of preparation, so the next day, this is very important. When you read the scripture, you must really understand. So now the next day that followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees came together unto Pilate. Now, now you ask yourself a question. If the next day is the Sabbath, is the 7th the day or the weekly Sabbath that they came to Pilate, the chief priests and the Pharisees, it is of necessity that it is a set apart day where they will not be going to meet the Gentiles. They wouldn't do that. So you ask yourself a question. So what Sabbath was this? Listen to 27:64. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure. Okay, these are the Pharisees that are asking Pilate to make sure that it is what secured, right? The next day after the day of preparation, they come to Pilate. Yeah. So this is dawn of the next day, right? This is the next day, and I've just given it as a 7th week Sabbath. I want us to understand, or I want us to see if exactly it's a 7th day weekly Sabbath, or it is a festal Sabbath. It is a high day. Right. Luke 23:52. It's just some New Testament give us these explicit verses which we have read, right? Luke 23:52. This man went unto Pilate, speaking of Yahusha'S of Ramathaim, right? And begged the body of Yahusha, and he took it down and wrapped it in linen. And we saw that he went there at evening, right? He went to Pilate in the evening and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on, verse 54. Now the word drew on there is epiphosko in the Greek language, right? And epiphosko means dawn. Dawn is not night. Beloved, I want us to understand that. Dawn is not night. Dawn is morning. So when scripture says, and the Sabbath drew on, it is obviously that it was getting to be light. The Sabbath drew on. Just to clarify here, which Sabbath was this? Which Sabbath was this? Was this a weekly 7th-day Sabbath, or it was a festal Sabbath? A set-apart convocation of the feast. Let's go into scripture. Right, Yahushua 19, I'll start reading from verse 30. When Yahusha therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. The Yahudim therefore, because it was preparation that the bodies should not remain upon the stake on the Sabbath. Now, Yahushua clarifies, John clarifies, and goes on to say, for that Sabbath day was an high day. So they besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. Now, let's go to the book of Mark. Mark gives us a clue to clarify further. So, Mark, so here Yahushua says, this Sabbath of crucifixion was a high Sabbath. This is a high Sabbath. Right? A high Sabbath. A high Sabbath night. Right? So this period is what is called a high Sabbath. Now, let us compare with other clues elsewhere in the scripture and see if we can determine these periods. And so we can understand exactly what happened in the week of Yahusha'S crucifixion. Mark 16, verse 1. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary or Miriam of Magdala and Miriam, the mother of James, and Salome had bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. So, and verse 2 says, and very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. I think I need to draw another diagram here. So, there we are. Let me draw another diagram so that it can start to make sense. Right. So I want to start from the 60th day, right? Then we have the 6th night, right? Right, because that's the only way it can become clearer, right? So that's the mixing time. Then we have the 7th day, right? We have the 7th day, light period. Then we have the 7th cycle, night period. So the 7th cycle, night period will come here. Then we have dawn to usher in the first day of the week. I think we should be able to explain from these diagrams. So there we are. That's another mixing. There we are. We have another mixing here. Right, there we are. Okay, because this is dawn, we have another mixing here, and a new day is starting there, right? So we have a mixing time, right? We have a mixing time here. I hope you'll be able to see this on the video. We will have a mixing time also here. Right, there we are. So it will be a mixture. Okay, we are coming from a dark period here, coming from the night. So obviously it's a mixing, and it's a mixing here, it's a mixing there, it's a mixing there, and it's a mixing there. Right, beloved? I don't want to lose you at all. I don't want to lose you at all. So, where was I? I've lost my... Right. So we've read about the Sabbath in Yahusha'S 19 verse 31. That was a high Sabbath. 1931 says it was a high Sabbath. What we need to take note of, the Yahudim, therefore, because it was the preparation that the bodies should not remain upon the stake on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. Then Mark gives us the clue to clarify. And when the Sabbath was passed, Miriam of Magdala and the other Miriam, mother of James and Salome, had bought sweet spices. Listen to the language. They had bought sweet spices. In other words, they already had the spices. Right. This is prep day. Right. This is prep. Oh, I'm using the wrong one. This is prep day, right? This is prep day. I want to make this the 60th day. This is now the 60th day, right? This is night of the 60th day, right? It is still the 6th. And this is dawn. This is dawn. And this is the 7th day, Sabbath. Right? This is the night of the seventh day. Right? This is dawn. Okay, this is Arab or evening or dusk. Right? And this is dawn. Right? This is dawn. Right? And this is the first day. That is the first day. Right? That's the first day. I hope it's clear. You can see that. That's the first day. Now, let's read the scripture. And then we observe how that time sequence is running. And Mark 16:2 says, and very early in the morning, the first day of the week, right, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. So Mark 16:1 and 2 is making it very clear, right, that early in the morning here, very at dawn, right, that's when they came to the sepulchre here. That's when they came to the sepulchre. Right. How do you spell that? It's Sepulchre. Right. So very early in the morning, that's when they came to the sepulchre of the first day of the week. So obviously, when you read that, it is clearly showing you that the time before this morning, it was the Sabbath. Because the Sabbath is the one that comes before the first day of the week. So there are two Sabbaths spoken of in the Besora of the New Testament. The Mark 16:1 to 2 and the Yahusha'S 19 verse 31, which we heard, he says, the Yahudim therefore, because it was the preparation that the bodies should not remain upon the stake on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. So Mark gives us the clue to clarify. The Sabbath that Mark is talking about is a Sabbath that comes before the first day of the week. Yet, the one that Yahusha'S is telling us about is a Sabbath that is described as a high Sabbath. So you must be able to locate these two Shabbats in this narrative. If you don't locate them, you are going to have problems of managing the sequence of times or the unrolling of time in the New Testament. So we have two options here. Either we have the weekly Sabbath as shown here, or we have the annual Sabbath, annual first Sabbath of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? Now, this is not the weekly Sabbath, but this is the first day of the Sabbath of the Unleavened Bread. And when they came here on this day, the following day, they came to see the sepulchre, right? And the following day after this Sabbath, this Moedim Sabbath, then they went to buy the spices. Right. Remember, scripture says, in the middle of the week, that is the Passover, or which is also called the preparation day. So this preparation day, right, is the Passover. That's the Passover. Yahusha must die on the Passover. He is the Passover lamb. And he dies in the middle of the week, as we have read. And the middle of the week is supposed to be Wednesday. So this will be a Wednesday, preparation day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And after this preparation day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, then we enter into the Sabbath of the unleavened bread, which is also called the set-apart convocation, the first set-apart convocation of the unleavened bread. Am I with someone there? Now, if we say they bought the spices during the dawn, when the Sabbath is coming to an end, here, right? Where's dawn? Dawn is here, right? Okay, no, dawn is here. The dawn of the Sabbath is here. The dawn after the Sabbath is here, right? So if we say they bought the spices at this period, this dawn period, right, before the first day of the week, then obviously they are transgressing against the statute that prohibits anything to be done in the 24 hours of the Sabbath. So when the first Sabbath is coming to an end, and when the Sabbath is coming to an end, and the first day is beginning, if we say that that's when they obtained the spices in this time, we are going to have a serious problem of breaking Yah's Torah. For scripture says in Luke 24 verse 1, now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared. Right? When they came here with the spices, they were already prepared, beloved. Right? The spices were already prepared. Right? They were already there. They were not coming to buy at this time. They were coming with spices prepared already. So when did they get these spices? Obviously not in the seventh day, right? And it is never mentioned right here at preparation day, right? But it could be that is the period. So they could only prepare the spices from this preparation day on the 6th day to this, remember, the 5th, right? Here we are. Where are we? Right? So that's Passover. Passover was taking place and on Wednesday, right? And then if we say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so this would be the 4th day of the week, right? That would be the 4th day of the week. And that Sabbath would be the 5th day of the week. That is the 5th day of the week. And that day is a set apart day. They are not doing anything in this day. They are not going to buy spices in this day. So the only time that they could go and buy spices is on the 6th day. This is when they bought spices, right? Bought spices, prepared them, right? And prepared them. They bought spices on the 6th day, prepared them, and then they went into the Sabbath to keep the Sabbath according to the commandment, right? And then they woke up early in the morning when the Sabbath was ending, going towards the first day of the week, right? They were having their spices with them. They wanted to come and prepare the body. But when they came and they found the tomb empty. Listen to Matthew chapter 28. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. So it's very clear that it's at the end of the weekly Sabbath, right? That they came, right, at dawn, when the first day of the week was coming, or when the first day of the week had started. That's when they came to the sepulchre to try, not to try, but to dress up the body, and they found that there was no one when they got into the sepulchre. Very clear and explicit verse, showing that by dawn, the first day, Yahusha was not in the tomb. So the Sabbath is ending at dawn as the first day starts. Listen to Yahushua chapter 19:30. When Yahusha therefore had received the vinegar, he said, "It is finished," and he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. 31, the Yahudim, therefore, because it was the preparation day, the bodies should not remain upon the stake on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was an high Sabbath. This is the Sabbath, right? Impaled here on the third hour, and the sixth hour dies. A miraculous darkness, supernatural darkness taking place. Then Yahushua collects the body in the evening, right? Puts it in the tomb the whole night. The whole night he was working. Yahushua is working, right? Yahushua is working the whole night, putting the body in the tomb. And then they go to keep the weekly Sabbath. So they're going to keep, not the weekly, they're going to keep the annual Sabbath, which is the 50th day of the week, right? And thereafter, the only day that they could have to buy and prepare spices was the 50th day, was the 60th day, right? The day of preparation of the weekly Sabbath. Yahushua in 1932, then came the soldiers and break the legs of the first and of the other, which was, oh no, I've jumped another verse here. Verse 31. The Yahudim, therefore, because it was the preparation that the bodies should not remain upon the stake on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was in a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken. Welcome, beloved. Right, then, Yahushua in 1932 says, then came the soldiers, and they break the legs of the first and the other, which was crucified with him. 33 goes on to say, but when they came to Yahushua, they saw that he was dead already. They break not his legs. But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water. And he that saw it bare record, and his record is true. And he knoweth that he saith truth, that ye might believe. For these things were done, that the scripture should be fulfilled. A bone of him shall not be broken. And again, another scripture says, they shall look on him whom they pierced. And after this, Yahushua of Ramathaim, being a disciple of Yahushua, but secretly for fear of the Yahudim, besought Pilate that he might take away the body of Yahushua. And the Pilate gave him leave. He came and therefore took the body of Yahushua. And there came Nicodemus, which at the first came to Yahushua by night, and they brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100-pound weight. So what we see, what we observe in Yahushua chapter 19, is that on this Passover day, right, which was the 4th day of the week, he dies. On the 5th day of the week, which was a set-apart convocation, a Shabbat of the festivals, this is when he was in the tomb, resting in the tomb. He was already, Yahushua was already, okay, they were not waiting. Those went away, the women with the spices, they could not dress him. So there he was already put into the tomb. So that is you have the first night, right, of the 50th day, and then you have of the 4th day, then you have the second night of the 50th day, and then you have the third night of the 60th day, right? And then you have the first night of the Sabbath day, and you have the second night of the 60th day, and then you have am I correct? No. You have the first night of the 40th day, and the second night of the 50th day, and the third night of the 60th day. So the days that Yahushua spent in the tomb are the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th days of the week. And the nights that he spent in the tomb are the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th days of the week. So scripture then goes on in Yahusha'S chapter 20. It says, the first day of the week cometh Mary Magdala early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and they seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Okay, right. Then she runneth and cometh to Shimon Kepha, and to the other disciple whom Yahusha loved, and said unto them, they have taken away the master out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him. So this is happening on the first day of the week. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping. As she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and they see the two messengers in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Yahusha had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my master, and I know not where they have laid him. And when she had thus said, she turned herself back and saw Yahusha standing, and knew not that it was Yahusha. Yahusha saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Yahusha saith unto her, Miriam. She turned herself and said unto him, Rabbon, or Rabbi, which is to mean, say, Master. Yahusha saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my Elohim and your Elohim. So Miriam of Magdala came and told the disciples that she had seen the Master, and that he had spoken these things unto her. Then the same day at evening, must understand this, beloved. It is the same day, right? Verse 1 we read, it says, the first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and they seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. And verse 19 says, verse 19 of Yahusha'S chapter 20, verse 19 says, then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Yahudim, came Yahusha, and they stood in their midst, and they said unto them, Peace be unto you. You can't miss that. You can't certainly miss that. You would have to be very hard of understanding to miss this. Because this cannot get clearer than that. In the morning, it is the first day of the week. In the evening, right, when they are gathered in the upper room, it is the first day of the week. So the light part and the dark part of this cycle belongs to the same cycle. There is no change of cycles at evening. It remains to be the same cycle, the same day of the week. Allah, we are